Hello, welcome to the Sutliffian Report. Today, we are going to talk about hypocrisy and Islam and Sharia, and we're going to name some names. We're going to point things out, and we're not holding anything back. But as this is a Christian news show, I always like to start with a reading from God's Word. And these readings, by the way, if you don't know, come from the daily devotionals that I write and I publish every day. If you're interested in joining the list, just send me your email. You can find me on Facebook and put it in private messenger to me. I send them out once a day. Uh, I try to keep up. Part of my keeping on task with God is actually studying the Word of God, and I hope that becomes personal for you. But here we go from Galatians 3 1 to 5. O foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you that you should not obey the truth, before whose eyes Jesus Christ has been evidently set forth, crucified amongst you? This only would I learn of you. Received you by the Spirit? You the Spirit by the works of the law or by the hearing of faith? Are you so foolish, having begun in the Spirit? Are you now made perfect by the flesh? Have you suffered so many things in vain, if it be yet in vain? He therefore that ministers to you the Spirit and works miracles amongst you, does he by the works of the law or by the hearing of the faith? Now, my thoughts are this: what does it mean to give up something you hold dear and add something to it? Could you add to your faith in Christ that in order to be saved, you must do this or that? God forbid that we should dare consider ourselves justified by Christ and by things we do ourselves. This is the vanity Paul speaks of. How vain would we be if we think we are so powerful, even though we bear the burden of our sin and can in truth do nothing to take away that burden? Suddenly start to say, because of Jesus and I am free of sin. What vanity. Paul's reasoning is drastically important. Miracles follow those that believe because we have access to the one who does impossible things. Shall we now proclaim that those miracles occur because of something we do? That would, in truth, be so vain. You would start to wonder about a person's mental health. Yet, we have seen cancer healed, the lame walk, the blind see, the deaf hear, and so much more. All because of Jesus, not because of anything we've done. Christians can pray and talk to the living God. He hears our prayers. As believers, we recognize that even crediting the fact that we prayed and saw God do a miracle is putting too much credit on our part. We are His, and doing His will means interceding. How then can we take credit? Lord Jesus, thank you and praise you for allowing us to pray for others, Lord, for giving us the chance to see you do these impossible things by interceding, Lord. I thank you, Lord, that you did this impossible thing of interceding for me and being that mediator, Lord. Lord, I ask that so many others would find you and find that worthy salvation, that worthy God of worship, which is only you. In your name, Lord Jesus, amen. Now, I am going to get into my research that I have been working on for a while. Let me say this, as I put this together, I kind of felt a little overwhelmed at the same time. I was shocked. And my best way to explain that um, is to show you what I've been working on. Now, and let me get the mouse over there. Okay. I talked last week about Sharia A7.3. A7.2. I put the wrong one up there. Sorry about that. A7.2. Unlawful knowledge includes. This is basically haram knowledge. It's not lawful. And the point is that I really want to talk about is philosophy. And this includes number 6, anything that is a means to create doubt. My question is this truly followed by the devout? Are the imams who are telling you not to study philosophy, not studying philosophy? Are they being the examples? See, in Christianity and Judaism, when you tell somebody not to do something, you better not be doing it. Because you're supposed to be the example. And this is extremely important in our world, but in Islam, it's not the same. Let me put I can put the link in if you want to join us, Larry or Andrew. Let me put that in, and I know where to find you, so I'm just going to put the link in. Now, here's my big issue with this. The word philosophy. I happen to be somebody who has an undergraduate degree in religion and philosophy. I studied under, and I'm going to brag for a second, Dr. David Bessinger. It's very rare somebody brags about who their professors were. Well, I brag because my professor was so good. I enjoyed being. It was enjoyable. At the same time, he was incredibly frustrating. What do I mean by that? When I took philosophy, and I don't know if anybody else has taken philosophy, the one thing that drove us all mad, I started as a freshman, and it was a freshman level class, philosophy 101. He refused to ever tell us what he believed about anything he taught us. It didn't matter what it was, he refused. I mean, for the entire time I was in college, he didn't tell any one of us what he believed. His purpose was to make us think about what we were learning. He wanted us to come to our own judgments, to use our own brains. If we had questions, we were supposed to question it. And that is the number one reason Islam claims that you shouldn't learn philosophy. So I want to get into what the Islamic scholars say. Now, I have 3 books with me, and just a second, I'll grab them. Put them in my travel bag. These books. Four books. All right. Sorry. And the first one, I'm going to show you Said Qutb's book, and Social Justice in Islam. We're going to quote from that today. We're going to quote from Al-Ghazali, Kitab al-Ilm, but that is the Book of Knowledge. Book 1, Revival of the Religious Sciences. These, and the last one, we'll be talking, it's Dr. Muhammad Shafiq's book, Growth on Islamic Thought in North America, a focus on Ismail al-Faruqi. And we're going to get into why on that. Now, these 3 books, by which are considered big, huge scholars here. This is where, it bothered me that they are saying, don't study this. Yet I knew something about that. I knew that most of those people who are saying, again, this is what Shariah says. Most of those people who write about what you shouldn't do have studied philosophy. We're going to get into that. So this is why I'm a little surprised to find this. And let me get my mouse in the right spot. Here we go. Said Qutb's opinion. So we're going to start with him. He's pictured there behind bars because it's where he spent a good portion of his life in Egypt. Said Qutb came to the United States, where I'm going to talk to that in a little bit, to study education. If you study, if you take an education degree in a graduate level, you have to, at bare minimum, take a philosophy of education class. Yeah. So he studied. And by the way, those foundations of education classes that are the bare minimum, you take that class, is the most, it's the worst, most opinionated crap that I've ever seen in all my studies of philosophy. It's worse than anything I've ever learned. But this is the stuff Syed Kutba studied, education. Here's what he says. So far as the study of philosophy is concerned, we have already indicated the universal theory of Islam on the universe, life, and mankind. This is essentially different from the nature of other universal philosophies that have obtained in the West from the days of the Greeks to the present. This is not the place to discuss the difference. It will suffice to recognize merely that there does exist a radical divergence. Wait a minute. You think about this. All right. So philosophy. We got to keep looking at what they define as philosophy. You're going to hear this. Again, at the beginning of this is study of philosophy. We've already indicated the universal theory of Islam on the universe and life and mankind, essentially different from the nature of other universal philosophies. So they're considering Islam not only theology, but its own philosophy. And this is, yes, Andrew has just said, this man who has this is where I'm going to say Andrew, he does know. He does know. This is what I think is interesting. I don't think there's any way Syed Kutba could not know that Mo took a lot of this from Greek philosophy. That's what I'm going to say to you. And we're going to talk about a good many of those scholars again, I have an undergraduate degree in philosophy. I know these things. I see these things. I see the Gnosticism. And as a man who studied religion and philosophy in the undergraduate level and took education on the graduate level and did intelligence analysis on a postgrad level, I look at this stuff. There's so many contradictions, and I'm sitting there, how can anybody accept this? Well, let's keep going. Here's more of his opinion. The Azhar, which is the Egyptian university, in particular, has had a mission in this regard, a mission that it has not fulfilled to reach the overall concept of Islam, to present it. This is shocking to me. When I understand we're talking about Islam, but they're talking about education. I want you to keep this in mind. They believe Azhar, a university, again, has not fulfilled its mission because it has not presented forcefully and coherently in the language and style of the age. We're talking about Islam being presented forcefully. What do you call that? It's not. That's called jihad, people. Is Azhar presenting jihad? Compare it with other schools of philosophy, but instead of undertaking this task, the Azhar has continued to teach what it erroneously called Islamic philosophy, taken from the books of Ibn Sina and Ibn Rushd. These are reflections of Greek philosophy which have no connection whatsoever with the overall concept of philosophy of Islam. Now, this is where Andrew Martin, this is where I say, he knows. He doesn't want you to read the Greek philosophy, because if you read the Greek philosophy, you realize there is a connection between what Mo shared, what Muhammad taught, and what the Greek philosophers taught. There is a ban on learning this, because God forbid you as a Muslim learn these things. Why? Why is there a ban? Because you will leave Islam. Isn't this reason enough for you as a follower of Muhammad, a lover of Shariah, to find out why don't they want you to learn something? Anytime someone tells me not to know something, wants to keep me quiet, I dig in. It's the whole reason why I'm doing what I'm doing today. Uh, take a look at the reasons. You'll see my testimony on why I do what I do. I was told to shut up. I got banned um, from my own from my own college for telling and investigating truth. Oh, well, I'm now they don't ban me. Now they're kind of paying more attention because I warned them about some things and I got proven right. Guess what? This is just sad, sorry stuff. Now, I don't have him as a picture behind bars because when he wrote this, he wasn't behind bars. He was here in the States. Social justice. He wrote it here in the States. Here's more of his opinion. This is, if then we are able to establish a sound Islamic theory of the universal life and mankind, it is essential that Western philosophies and their moral corollaries should not be studied at all in our secondary schools. So do not allow teenagers to learn anything about Western philosophy, God forbid, because then they would think there's importance in asking questions. Ooh. Well, how do we know that Mecca actually exists? Shh, don't ask that. How come Plato said this and Socrates said this and wait a minute, how come these stories are incomplete in the Quran? Can't ask that. Why don't they line up with each other? Oh, don't ask those things. See, philosophy teaches you to break things down. That's why when they teach you philosophy, when you're done learning, you're likely to get a job writing policy manuals because you break things down to the smallest thing. And that's who they hire to write policy manuals. It's a shocking, truthful thing. Been there, done that. Okay, let me just keep going. And by the very nature of the case, they should not be studied in the Czar College until the very end of the course. Wait till the end. Don't tell them anything until the very end. That way they're indoctrinated. They're safe. In every center of the study, such Western philosophy should be preceded by a course in pure Islamic thought, as distinct from the so-called Islamic philosophy, in order to emphasize the true Islamic viewpoint. There's a small point that I agree on here. And I'll say this, as Christians, baby Christians, we want to encourage to grow. We want to encourage them to grow in the scriptures. Okay. We don't want them to fall away. So we'll encourage them to study the scriptures, but we're not going to tell them they can't do things. We'll tell them you shouldn't do things. There are things you shouldn't. You can't do some things and give yourself a good portrayal of being a good Christian. Again, Andrew, you are right. They're fully invested, sunk cost. Yeah, they're in there. Yes, that is true. It's I've got these books and I'm sitting here looking at them, and when I saw that philosophy last week and when we're going over it, I just could not leave it alone. I could not leave it alone because this to me really hits me to think that people would be told to ignore. I'm not going to say learning philosophy is an easy thing and that it doesn't make your brain hurt at times, because it does. I'm going to admit that. All right. It does make you think. It does sometimes hurt up here because you're thinking about things you never expected to be thinking of. And sometimes you feel like you're too young to understand these things. That's not a wrong thing to have happen. If you're being forced to think of something you never expected to think, it does pull at your brain. I'm going to tell you that point blank, it does. This is one of the reasons why, again, I love my philosophy teacher. And I'll brag about him. As much as he frustrated us by not telling us what he believed, he forced us to think for ourselves. That is not allowed in Islam. Now, Here's the thing I want to ask you. Did Said Qutb study philosophy? Well, we know that the Oxford University Press book by John Calvert, Said Qutb and the Origins of Radical Islam, in the early 40s, and this quote comes from Wikipedia, that's all on here, but the source is John Calvert's book. In the early 40s, he encountered the work of Nobel Prize winner, French eugenicist Alexis Carrel, who would have a seminal and lasting influence on his criticism of Western civilization. Who's John Carrel? Eugenicist. He's a philosopher. He would have a seminal and lasting influence on the criticism of Western civilization. Instead of liberating man as the post-Enlightenment, what are we talking about? We're talking about philosophy. He believed the Western modernity enmeshed people in spiritually numbing networks of control and discipline, and that rather than building and caring communities, it cultivated attitudes of selfish individualism. Qutb regarded Carrel as a rare sort of Western thinker who understood that his civilization deprecated humanity. This is where Qutb talks about Jahiliyyah, the time before Islam. And, this is, you don't want to be with the Jahiliyyah. You get left behind. Yeah. Before Islam, Jahiliyyah. You don't want to be there. To think that this man who's telling everybody, don't learn philosophy, but he found it inspiring. Don't learn it. Start thinking, why are they scared that you learn it? Muslims out there, do you dare to learn what Said Qutb learned? Philosophy. I dare you. Why? Because your Sharia forbids it, but your scholars are willing to invest their time in it. Ooh, but is it just Said Qutb? Let's take a look. How about Al-Ghazali? His opinion. This comes from the Kitab al-Ilm. Again, that is this book. Yeah, let me see if I can show it. Sorry. Al-Ghazali's book. The Book of Knowledge. Book 1, Revival of the Religious Sciences. It says, with regards to philosophy in and of itself, it is not a discipline. Rather, it is comprised of 4 areas of inquiry. Now, this is interesting because I would never consider this, but it did make me think. And there's a point where I have to agree with him, and we're going to get into that. Now, he includes in philosophy geometry and mathematics. This is his first point. Geometry and math are permissible. Okay. The concept of logic is it kind of works. You can't have math. You can't use math without using logic. I get that. So I can kind of accept that. No one needs to be prevented from them, except that you fear you may transgress beyond them into blameworthy disciplines. So wait a minute. Math can hurt you? Math can. What are you actually saying? If math can hurt you? Okay, again, this is the Islamic scholar on this. The majority that practice geometry and mathematics go beyond them into innovation. So you come up with new types of math that help all of humanity explore and go beyond wherever they're currently at. And that would be bad? Are you starting to see why there are very few Nobel Prize winners under Islam? So if they listen to this stuff, they're not willing to learn. Start using your brains, people. This stuff just makes you think. It goes on. Therefore, preventing the vulnerable from it, not for itself. Rather, it is comparable to keeping a child. Again, we're talking about math. It's comparable to keeping a child from the river's edge out of fear that he may fall into the river. Don't learn math. You might drown. Oh, gosh. All right. Not my words, they're his. Sorry, that to me is just ridiculous. All right. Don't learn math. Your child may fall into a river and drown. You would prevent a new convert to Islam from frequenting those who deny the faith. Really? And prevent a new convert? Why? Why would you prevent them from being around others? Are you so scared that their faith isn't? I want you to keep thinking about this statement. Islam is so scared that a new convert might use his brain and think for himself. They don't want him around anybody that can influence him. And then here's the part that makes you think also. Although frequenting them is not recommended, even for those strong in their faith. Whoa! So a non-Christian, a non-Muslim, can influence a Muslim so highly that even a strong in faith Muslim can leave Islam. What does that say? What does it say about Islam? It's not, there's nothing there. Wow. Here's another point. This goes on. The second is logic. So again, he separated math from logic, which kind of was my acceptance of considering math part of philosophy. So I'm still, I don't understand his reasoning here. But he separates it. The second is logic. It is the investigation into what constitute valid proofs and their conditions. See, now, Ghazali reveals here, because he knows what logic is, that he studied philosophy. There's no way he cannot know that. How he includes math, again, if he doesn't consider it part of logic, it has me a little confused. The third is metaphysics. It's investigation into the essence and attributes of God. It is equally an element of theology. Now, this is where this concept of Islamic philosophy comes along. Metaphysics. Essence and attributes of God. Well, essence, yes, we do talk about arguments for God. We can talk, again, philosophy allows you to take things down and break things down and put things back together again. Are there arguments for God? Absolutely. Are there things about God that can change, can present arguments? Yes. Sure, you're gonna be laughing. Now, you know what? I gotta bring it up. That makes sense. Sharon just brought up what I consider an incredibly valid point. If we went back and we looked at this screen just before here, and I'll do that okay. Got to get my mouse back over here. We're just going to go previous. All right. We go back to geometry and math. In Common Core math, which certain idiot governors and certain idiot union presidents accepted unconditionally before the standards were even written. And then they were teaching kids how to do math. And they would go home and their parents would go, "What? What are you doing?" Because the truth was, it's bad math, what they were being taught. Now, is this why? Again, that started under Obama. It was created under Obama, who admitted to everybody he had an Islamic faith, who called the Islamic prayer beautiful, most beautiful thing he'd heard. And was he afraid that if you learn math, you might leave Islam? I'm not going to stop laughing about that one for a while. All right, let's keep going. it says, however, philosophers are not unique in this area of knowledge. Rather, they're unique in their doctrinal schools. Now, I kind of agree and I don't agree at the same time. I'll leave that a little bit for a bit. Some of which entail disbelief and some innovation. So there are schools of thought in philosophy. That's true. To say that there are no philosophers that agree with each other, that's problematic. Do you know anybody that agrees 100% with someone else? Because I actually don't. I know brothers and sisters who don't. I mean, they're like identical twins, and they don't agree on everything. See, they're their own person. You might agree on 99%, 99.99%, but there's always one little thing that's different. I mean, one of my best friends, every once in a while, there's something I'll have to sit there and say, I'm not sure I agree or disagree, but I have a little different opinion. Why is this happening? Why are they scared of philosophy? Again, they said they were scared of math. I didn't say it. They did. Let's keep going. Thank you for joining us, Dragon. God bless you. However, philosophers are not unique in this area of knowledge. Rather, they are unique in their doctrinal schools, some which entail disbelief and some innovation. Again, innovation is dangerous according to Islam. In the same manner, the doctrine of the rationalist theologians, are you allowed to have rationalism in Islam? Start asking yourself those things. And they're saying it's not a discipline in and of itself. But we're talking about philosophy. Are theology and philosophy the same thing in Islam? Yes. And that huge difference between is what Islam teaches and what philosophy actually is. This has to do with defining the terms. If you redefine the terms, you can have a whole discussion that means something totally different. And that is what liberals tend to do. They take a beautiful name like Karen, and we've ended up destroying wonderful women with the name Karen. Why? Because they're now the example of liberalism. And again, I don't know who came up with the idea of calling somebody that. I think it's a horrible thing to people named Karen. That's my best example of that kind of thing. And I do blame liberals for that. I'd be willing to bet it was a liberal who came up with that. All right, let's keep going. Okay. Some manner, the rationalist. Okay, let's keep going. I'm going to the false doctrine. They talk about false doctrinal schools, just as philosophers have. Again, philosophy has opinions. You're allowed to have opinions, but are you allowed to have your own opinion in Islam? In Christianity, you're allowed to have a discussion between you and the living God. Can you do that in Islam? When your concept of prayer is banging your head on the ground, you have to do it this way. You must do it this way. And God forbid you fart. Fart negates a prayer. What? God can't plug his nose? Oh, a dog walks by, no prayer. No prayer. You're just no good. A woman walks by, no good. No good. And this is a worthy God of worship. All right, let's keep talking about this philosophy. This fourth view of philosophy, the fourth part of philosophy. Again, this is Al-Ghazali. He's one of the main commentators in Reliance of the Traveler. And this is why I'm picking on him right now. He says the fourth field of philosophy is natural sciences. Really? Start thinking about this. The fourth is the field of natural sciences, a portion of which contradicts the law and the true religion. Okay, contradicts Islam because the sun does not set in a muddy pool. Oh, so wait a minute. So who's really wrong here? Is it Islam or is it science? If Islam is offended because their guy who is supposed to have created this stuff, wait a minute, who said the sun is set in the middle pool? According to the Quran, it's not Muhammad that said it. According to the Quran, it's not Ibn Kathir that said it. According to the Quran, it's not anyone but Allah who says it. So if Allah said the sun set in a muddy pool, this is where natural sciences go against their true faith. Whoa. So have we just, so is science now proven all of Islam wrong? Well, doesn't the Quran say things like, going again, natural sciences? We'll pick on that in just a second. We'll just keep going. It is ignorance and not a discipline that occurs among the categories of the science, and a portion of the investigators of characteristics of physical bodies and their intrinsic natures. And the manner in which they change and become transformed. This category resembles the viewpoint of physicians, except that a sickness or health, when they're natural scientists, scrutinize all physical entities as they transform and move. Medicine, however, is superior to it, for there is a need for specific branches of speculation among physical science. Wait a minute. So, according to the Quran, women have sperm, and it comes from their breasts. But the Quran says this, and what does science teach us? Do women have sperm? No. Do they have a fluid? Yeah. Does it come from the breasts? Well, we have something called breast milk that comes from the breast. And before that, there is a period of time when a child, and before the milk comes, there is a clear fluid that comes out that builds up a child's immunities that pass from the mother to the child. Is that sperm? No. Wait a minute. If it's not sperm, is the Quran proven a horrible mistake? Yes. Oh, so they don't want you to learn science because of this? And Al-Ghazali's calling it philosophy. Oh. Is this to get you to stop learning? Isn't this reason to learn? Again, I sit here and I read this and I'm like, wait a minute, this is just nutty. All right. Now, I have to tell you a story about why I even pay attention to Faruqi. And that is because his student, Dr. Muhammad Shafiq, is local to me. Dr. Muhammad Shafiq brags about this man, having been his doctoral advisor. Everybody who knows who Dr. Faruqi was understands that's a statement that he's bragging about being affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood. Because Faruqi started a good many Muslim Brotherhood organizations here in the United States. And I'm going to be mentioning one of them, a couple of them in a few minutes. Now, this man was born in Jaffa when it was the Mandate of Palestine in 1921, which was, again, a property of the UK at that point, and it was conceded to the UK by Turkey. Okay. Was there a country called Palestine? No. It's going to become important. Dr. Shafiq states that in 1945, Faruqi became the district governor of Galilee in the government of Palestine. There was no government of Palestine. This is misinformation. There was no government of Palestine, period. And that Faruqi took up arms against Israel in 1948. Well, there is a problem with him doing this in this time frame. And this is what I'm curious about. I've actually sent letters to inquire about this. Because if this happened and he then came to the United States, I think he would have had to lie on his student visa application. Keep thinking about that. Now, one of the founders of the Muslim Brotherhood, again, this is Ismail Faruqi we're talking about. His biography on the IIIT, the International Institute of Islamic Thought site, it says, this is what I find funny. They give his name, they get a nice picture of him here, and they say he's the founder of the Association of Muslim Social Scientists and the AMSS, the American Association of Muslim Social Scientists. He's also the founder of the International Institute of Islamic Thought. He's the founder of Islamic Studies program at Temple University. He's a distinguished scholar of Islam and comparative religions. He trained at Indiana University, McGill University. They brag about all this. They say he's got a book on Christian ethics. Wait a minute. Ethics. Whoa. Ethics is a study of philosophy. Wait a minute. Aren't you forbidden from studying philosophy? Well, not if you're a scholar or you're going to tell people not to talk about philosophy. Whoa, this is problematic. All right. Let's take a look at what happened when Ismail Faruqi studied. See, he studied philosophy when he left Islam, a country. The first thing he did, he gets here, he studies philosophy. He had a choice. What do you want to study? He gets here, and this is the important part. I'm just going to read this part. And again, I took this from, God forgive me for I don't like Wikipedia, but I thought this was interesting. It's a point where you have to sit there and why are they hiding certain things? Take a look at this. His first appointment, and they say British mandate, government of Jerusalem, appointed in 1945, district governor of Galilee. I'm still trying to confirm this because I don't think this is accurate. Subsequent to the partition plan of Palestine. One of the reasons I think there's a problem here is think about how old he was. He was born in 21. By 1945, he's not very old. Would you have a 20-something in charge of a district? A government official? Most people wouldn't. You wouldn't pick a child, that would be a child, a 20-something, and put him in charge of something like that. Okay, but in 1948, al-Faruqi emigrates to Lebanon, where he studies at the American University of Beirut. In the next year, this is where it gets interesting. Is it the next year? No, in 1948, he is in Indiana. He is in Indiana University, Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, obtaining a master's in philosophy by 1949. Oh, that means in September of 48, he was there. Are you hearing where I'm having some problems here? It's okay for Faruqi to study philosophy. He's a good Muslim Brotherhood guy. Does he want you to learn philosophy? Pay attention. Does Shariah want you to study philosophy? No. God forbid you might want to ask questions. Really? But it's okay for them, these Islamic leaders. It's okay. Why not? Why not for everybody else? Keep reading here. I mean, look what his thesis is. Justifying the good, metaphysics, and epistemology of value. That's a little scary when you start considering what Islam considers good versus what the rest of the world considers good. Epistemology is a study of words. Knowledge, a study of knowledge. I'm sorry. You got to start paying attention. And this is, again, problematic. They start talking about phenomenology of Max Schreier, axiological intuitionism, post-enlightenment reason. Okay, we're getting into all this stuff. There's no way that Ismail Faruqi did not love the study of philosophy. He got a PhD in it. Don't study philosophy. But it's okay for them. Yes, yes, Andrew Martin. Yes, he got a second MA in philosophy. This is the stuff that makes me laugh. All right. Why would you? Here's my biggest problem here again. I'm laughing at this. He gets an MA in philosophy from Indiana University. Why would you get a second degree in philosophy from Harvard? That makes no sense. It's not logical. People do not go and get second degrees of the same exact thing. It makes no sense. Why? It's like throwing out all your hard work. Something does not make sense. Again, this is the narrative. So I think there's a lot more here. Thank you very much, Andrew, for pointing that out. I'm laughing. Why? Again, this is the guy. Well, we're going to talk about some of the stuff he wanted to do. Faruqi suggested curriculum. And I did not, I got tired of typing and I just want to get to this. And I found this really shocking. This is his recommendation for classes. Now, he wrote this. Let me just read a piece of what he recommended before we get to this. When he was in Pakistan, and he wanted to change, he was working in Pakistan shortly after becoming a professor in 1961, and he wants to change how things are being done. So him and a guy named Rahman get together and they write this thing up. It says this. There are 4 suggestions they want. Here's the first one. The Institute, they're talking about this is the school we're talking about is, please forgive me, for Karachi University. Okay. He's nominated as a member of the Board of Studies in the Department of Philosophy. Wait a minute. They have a philosophy department in Karachi. Isn't Karachi part of Pakistan? Yeah. Well, isn't Sharia supposed to be the law of the land in Pakistan? But they have a department of philosophy. Oh. And they got a doctor of philosophy. Some of this humor. Oh my gosh. I couldn't make things more. Again, I'm laughing because this is why I like going through Sharia slowly, because there's a lot of humor in this. All right, so pay attention. Now we got the guys who are into philosophy suggesting how the school should change. But don't you get into philosophy. That's what they want. So listen closely. The Institute, Karachi University, has become a place of detached scholarship that exhausts itself in the collation of manuscripts and the editing of ancient works. What it should be doing is uncovering the valuable ideas in our Islamic tradition so that they may be reevaluated in light of the contemporary and future needs of the Ummah. Now, this actually makes some sense. What are the needs of the Islamic community? Why are we not? I mean, I'm saying that he's asking that question. Why? He's asking questions that are important questions, but he's only able to do that because he studied philosophy. He's only able to see that because he didn't study Islam as in depth. Oh, which hear the next one. Number 2, the need of the Ummah, again, this is the community of Islam, the community of believers in Islam, falls into the following 6 categories: aesthetics, think art; sociological, economic; international, educational; and legal, including both the administration and judicial branches. These categories presuppose 2 prior ones, namely the methodological, in which the principles of Islamic research in these fields would be established, and the axiological, in which the final goals of all of the specific pursuits that constitute human life would be determined. All right, so everything has to come under the rose-colored glasses of Islam in order to be accepted. That's what they're basically saying. There's a problem here. They pointed out, and this is where I start. These next two, you have to start thinking. If you are a Muslim and you disagree with any of these statements, I want you to start thinking, are you allowed to ask these questions? Here's his number 3. In each of the 6 fields, answers should be sought to the following 3 questions. What are the Ummah's contemporary and future needs? Is that a wrong question to ask? Absolutely not. What are the future needs of Islam? If you take my suggestion, one of the future needs of all Islamic believers, leave the Quran, leave Allah. That's your future need. Okay, that's my suggestion. Because they lie to you. All right, let's keep going. Next question. This can be answered only after consummate examination of the Ummah's actuality. Actuality. What are their needs today? What does the Islamic tradition say concerning these needs? Oh, is it even close? Does it even address it? What solutions does it offer? What if it doesn't offer any? Again, these are dangerous questions that only a philosopher could ask. This question can be answered only as a consummate examination of the legacy. Oh, really? Al Faruqi, Muslim Brotherhood guy, Mr. Sunna, Mr. Sunni Muslim. Again, Muslim Brotherhood, the foundation of Al Qaeda, the parent of every single terror group out there. And this man is asking these questions. I don't see anything wrong with these questions. I think they're actually good. So, but the fact is, they're only able to be asked because he studied philosophy. Let's keep going. Again, we're still on his 3rd point. This question can only be answered constantly. Okay. How can Islamic tradition be interpreted or translated so as to satisfy the needs in question? Wait a minute. If he doesn't know that, what is that saying about Islam? We have an Islamic scholar, that's what he's credited with being, and he can't answer this question. How can Islamic tradition be interpreted or translated so as to satisfy the needs in question? Because he doesn't know the needs, and he's not sure that Islam can fill it. Again, Mr. Philosopher knows to answer these questions. I like this part. Okay. The question obviously presupposes a thorough grounding in methodology and axiology. Again, these are good questions. I have no problem with that. Listen to point 4. The recruitment. This is where it gets really important to pay attention. I've just talked about the rose-colored glasses of Islam. I've talked about how, in past shows, I've talked about how Faruqi created something called the Islamization of knowledge. Listen to his 4th point. The recruitment of 6 new and highly qualified professors in each of those research fields is suggested. Nationality should not be an issue. In addition to conducting research in their own fields, each will conduct seminars in their fields. Each professor will have a research assistant who will assist in the research as well as receiving training that will enable him to conduct independent research in the future. What's his goal? It's to put everything through the rose-colored glasses of Islam, so it can now be accepted as Islamic. You have to stop and think. Now, in front of you, no, this, what I want in front of you is what I read. I didn't put on the screen, but here's where what I have on the screen is what it comes down to. What does he want you to do as far as studies? I have one small section. He doesn't want you to learn philosophy until your 2nd year. We're talking about grad school. They call it the junior division curriculum. But When they're talking about junior division curriculum, they're talking about an advanced level of learning. We're not talking about your junior college. Pay close attention. Second year, Islamic doctrine. The reading shall consist of Arab language texts dealing with revelation, prophethood. Prophethood. Wait, does that mean there can be more than one prophet? Does that mean there can be more than Muhammad? Okay. Man, society, the Ummah, and the Islamic hope. Both classical and modern texts should be used. The Quran. The course should involve a critical reading of the Quran. Has there ever been a critical reading of the Quran in Islam? I think if there was, people would leave Islam. Again, only a philosopher could suggest this. This work should be done by every candidate and should constitute the personal concordance of Quranic ideas and quotations. Oh, no. So basically, you have to memorize the Quran and you have to quote it. Textbooks will be commentaries of Al-Tabari, Zamakhshari, Al-Qurtubi, Al-Razi, and Al-Manar. So you're only allowed to interpret the Quran by the tafsirs. You're not allowed to use your brain. Philosophy, the last course to be taken in the second year. It would include the study of Islamic philosophy, which is theology, from the Mu'tazila to Muhammad Iqbal. Whoa, okay. Here's the problem. He's going against Ghazali and Shariah. Why? Because Farooqi loves philosophy. So I find this really, really interesting. You can go on in here, and I do recommend a reading of this, but let me give you a clue why I keep talking about those rose-colored glasses of Islam. Dr. Farooqi went on and he created this organization called the Association of Muslim Social Scientists. This exists in the United States. I don't know if it's an international organization at this point. It may be because it started in the 70s. The first meeting was in 1972 at Chicago, Illinois Institute of Technology. In 72, 73, the main objectives of the AMSS were this: to encourage members to conduct research and studies in their areas of specialization within the social studies and humanities, to assist members in developing Islamic positions on contemporary issues, and then apply their new vision to their studies. So he wants all of these sciences, all of the studies that aren't yet considered approved Islamic, to obtain those approved Islamic stamps by Muslims studying them and giving their note of approval. Because they're not allowed until they're allowed. Yeah. This gets interesting. Farooqi was disappointed with traditional religious scholars, unfamiliarity with, forgive my typo there, with what was being taught outside the traditional Islamic religious schools. Muslim elites educated in Western academic institutions had no knowledge of Islam. So he saw, this is what I thought was interesting. He notices this. Why? Because he got a Western education. So he goes back to Pakistan. And those people who grew up and went through, they go through the Islamic schools, they know nothing, literally know nothing besides Islam. How functional are they in society? Now, the Muslim elites who learned about the West, they went to the West and they got an education. They have no clue about Islam. So they sees that huge dysfunction. They're not meshing. Because the people who know science, they're laughing at Islam. Really, you think we came from a blood clot? And they start to laugh. No, that's stupid. Well, So Faruqi's like, hey, we got to get along. You got stop. We can't say those things. No, wait. This is what's happening. Faruqi notices this, sees a problem, and he wants to change things. He wants to make them mesh. And the truth is, it doesn't work. And I'm glad he pointed it out and saw it. But what his goal is to change things to be Islamic rather than examining things and seeing what's truthful and what's not. Why? Because power is what he had. Staying in that position gave him power. And this is just, to me, it's fascinating stuff. All right, let me keep going here. And so I'm going to see if this works. Please let me know if you can hear. If you can't hear, I'm going to see what I can do to fix this.
A lot of people want to know, can I read philosophy? Can I read this? Can I read that? And the answer is, who are
Can you
you,
hear this?
right? Because
Please let me know.
it's not something that everybody should be reading. Okay, many of the great ulama,
Yeah, it's low, but
most
I can hear it.
studied
Thank
philosophy.
you.
Anybody who reads his works can tell that he really knew philosophy very, very well. But that wasn't
Sorry.
There's like a double wording too. Oh, you're muted, Paul.
his paradigm was not a philosophical paradigm. He had a paradigm that was indigenous Islam, the actual Islam that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed through the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, through the understanding of the companions and the righteous sort of early generations of Muslims. Okay, but he saw what was happening with the influence of external paradigms, traditions of reason, traditions of logic that were outside of our tradition, that were not indigenous to our tradition or were not divine in source. And so he read those books in order to break it down and to problematize it and to show sort of the weaknesses and the contradictions and where it fits and where it doesn't fit. Okay, so everybody who has a strong foundation in Islam, you're going to have to read things you don't agree with, right? I mean, I'm somebody, alhamdulillah, I've studied a bit, and so I have to read things that I don't agree with. You know, I have to read about this ideology and that ideology and the third ideology. Why? It's not that I'm studying it in the sense of learning from it. It's that I need to be able to account for it. I need to be able to deal with it. I need to be able to explain to people who find it appealing why it is appealing, but why it also isn't adequate. Okay. So if you're a scholar, and I use that term loosely here, like if you're an academic, if you're somebody who is already, with a strong foundation in Islam, then yes, you have to find your niche and you have to study things that you don't agree with and you have to break it down for other people and try not to be influenced by it. That's normal. Okay. But should every single average person just pick up a book on philosophy or Greek logic or this and that? And that? No, of course not. Right. If you don't have a strong foundation, you have to consider, you only get you can think of it as an empty vessel. Like imagine you have like a cup or a glass.
Did you hear that? He said an average person shouldn't. It's okay for him. He's read a lot of philosophy materials, and you can tell that because he knows how to think. But he destroys Islam by saying an average Muslim shouldn't learn these things because it might make them ask questions. You're not allowed to ask questions in Islam. What does that say about your own belief structures? If you're not allowed to ask questions, this stuff, I can't help it. It just makes me laugh. Okay, let's keep going. Let's take a look at this next one. Here we go.
From here. This is a personal question. Why are you studying at Yale if you see so little value in philosophy? I believe that philosophy is a science whose basic premise is flawed. The basic premise of philosophy is that via man's intellect, the ultimate truths of life can be arrived at. There is no need for inspiration from God. And I believe that no, that's simply not true. Unless and until we have the revelation from God, we're not going to arrive at the ultimate truths of life. And the greatest indication of this is that there have been hundreds of thousands of philosophers in history of man. And if you ever study philosophy, you must study hundreds of them, hundreds of them. And no two of them, from the time of the
You don't need to study hundreds of philosophers if you study philosophy. In fact, most people who study philosophy do not study hundreds of philosophers. So this is misinformation. It's purposeful. It's deceitful. What's the purpose? To make it seem overwhelming, to make it seem like you're going to be unduly influenced by being stuff crammed down your throat. This man, Yasser Qadi, is lying through his teeth. Why is he doing this? Why does he think it's bad for you, but it's good for him? Oh, again, he's the one studying philosophy, and yet he's lying through his teeth. What's the purpose in doing that? Is he trying to scare you? We'll go back.
pre-Socratic Greek philosophers until our modern living philosophers, no two of them ever agree on any fundamental point of life or death or ethics or morality or anything. How can this possibly be true when every single philosopher propounds a different theory of everything? If any philosopher were to come and agree with the previous philosopher, he wouldn't even be famous. He wouldn't be worth studying, right? You would be nobody. So in order to do something, he has to go against everybody, okay? And here you have, certain philosophers who become famous merely because they know they exist. I'm referring to who here? Not Galileo. Descartes. Descartes became famous in history because he proved to people he actually exists, right? I think, therefore...
So Yasser Qadi is making fun of René Descartes. Why? Because René Descartes had a job assigned to him by the Catholic Church to deal with the skepticism of his day. That's what he was hired to do. He was hired to address skepticism. It was a task assigned specifically to him. And if you read the book Meditations by René Descartes, he does an excellent job. That was his task. That was what he was assigned to do. And he says he became famous for it. No, he didn't. He got shunned for it. See, when you do the job well, back in those days, you did it so well. René Descartes is probably one of the most maligned great philosophers of his day. I love René Descartes' works. I love his book, Meditations. One of the best philosophers, I think, in history. Why? Because he took a task, he figured it out, did it in his reasoning. There's nothing you can say against it. He's mocking this man because he did his job. And he's doing it to avoid the topic. Why are you studying philosophy? He still hasn't answered that question. Please notice that. So he has changed the topic into mocking somebody else.
Hey, Paul,
Yes.
doesn't this go back to the earlier Sharia laws that you were talking about, like one or something like that, where you're not supposed to use reason?
Yes, you're smart. Yes.
So this Sharia law,
You're right out. Yes.
yeah, in this Sharia law, it's basically, it points out the ones that make you think, that go back to the other earlier Sharia law.
Yeah, and that's why I'm going through Sharia so slowly. The fact that, I guess I personally had a great love of studying philosophy in my undergraduate days because it made me think, and I'm not lying when I say it made my brain hurt at times, because there are concepts, and I will say, for a young or an older teen, young 20 something, that thinking about these things seem to contradict everything else you know. And if it doesn't make your brain hurt, if it doesn't make you think, something's wrong with you intellectually and developmentally. Some of these things you have to sit there and think and think and think. Now, this is why my philosophy teacher was right. My problem with Yasser Qadi is he's sitting here lying through his teeth to people. So he's going all the way to the required lying for the furtherance of Islam that we will get to someday in the future. It's a ways to go. I'm looking at this is what when I sat talking to Usama about this, that Islam is totally against philosophy because philosophy wants you to ask questions. If you look at how Yasser Qadi answers questions, it should tell you a lot about Islam. He doesn't answer the question. Do you remember the question about the holes in the narrative? How he said you shouldn't ask this question. What does that say about Islam when your leaders are saying you shouldn't ask that question? Don't ask that question. Really, is Islam not capable of defending itself? Is Islam not capable of standing on its own? Is Allah so incapable? I mean, I know Allah can't even add, because that's evidenced in the Quran. He can't add fractions. That's evidenced in the Quran. Take your time and look. You'll find out. I'm not lying. He can't add fractions. That's Allah we're talking about. So what does it mean when the people who are the leaders of Islam love philosophy to the point where they go and get their PhDs and their master's programs, and one guy claims he has 2 master's degrees in the same thing, which I'm sorry. If he did that for the purpose of saying he got a Harvard education, something's wrong in his head, because you don't go get the same degree. I've never heard of anybody doing that. I'm not saying it's not done. It makes no sense to do. It makes me wonder if there actually was a Harvard education, because it does not make sense. God bless you, Yonomo. Yonono. Thank you for joining us. I'm looking at this like something is seriously wrong if that's where he's at. I'm looking again. These imams are saying it's okay for them, but it's not okay for you. That is problematic to me. And this brings us to the last bit with 7.3 and 7.4. And I'll be getting into B next time, but offensive knowledge includes such things as post-classical poetry, permissible, contains romance and uselessness. Offensive. It really is. Is it offensive to talk about something romantic? To be honest, get guys together. We don't generally talk about things like poetry. We don't talk to each other about how to be romantic. Well, that's not exactly true. See, I'll tell you the truth. When the Christian boys get together, and these are married men, every once in a while, some guy will say, "Hey, I want to know if you think this will work. I mean, have an idea of something romantic." And sometimes the guys will just look at him like, "You cannot give your wife a vacuum cleaner and call it Valentine's Day present." Okay, some of us are clueless. I have no problem admitting that, but it's helpful. Okay, we do talk amongst ourselves. Yeah, is it useless? No, because iron sharpens iron. We learn how to be better people. So again, they're talking about useless knowledge. Is it good to learn how to be romantic from one guy to the other, or one woman to another? Absolutely. Should we be discussing this in a mixed company? And that's where I would probably be careful. When we're talking about literature, yes, we can get away with that, but I would be careful because it's not something I would suggest for mixed company. Permissible knowledge. This is where I have another good laugh. includes post-classical. Wait, okay. Did you notice up above it says offensive knowledge includes such things as post-classical poetry, but permissible knowledge includes post-classical poetry. Wait a minute. Is it offensive or is it permissible? The qualifier here. It doesn't contain stupidity or anything that's offensive. Well, I mean, is something offensive because it's stupid? Well, if you ever watch Teletubbies, I will agree that stupid can be offensive. I think it was too offensive to my children to allow them to watch it. I don't want them to be that dumb. Okay. That's the only time I'll agree. You have to be really, really stupid. Okay. Things that incite to evil, hinder from good, things that hinder you from doing good. I think it's good to learn a lot of different things. I probably learn a wider variety than most people. I don't know very many people who study Islam like I do. I don't know very many people who will read these quote scholars to find out what they really believe in, what is the real truth behind them. How many people know that these guys were out there studying philosophy? Well, they're telling people not to study philosophy. Well, you've heard it from me. I did the research and I sit there laughing. Okay. What does that say about Islam when the leaders tell you, don't do as I do as I say? In Christianity, we call it hypocrisy. And those leaders that lead like that, Christians are told to do one thing: leave. Do not follow them. So, you followers of Islam, that's my advice. If you have a leader telling you, don't do this, and he's doing it, leave him. My next suggestion: take a look at what the Quran says. Find out if there's actually any details in it, because they're missing. It's one of the things I'm having a good laugh with. I'm going and doing this study on Moses, and I got to do some updates on my site. Start studying to find out what is true. Some of these things are just so insane. What does it say when you refuse to accept what is true? I'm so happy those videos worked. I didn't think they would work. My luck has not been good with getting videos to play correctly. I'm going to close that. Okay. Let me just share this one other screen. To give you a clue is some of the things, and I think I closed the other article, darn it. There are, I don't think that's Yasser Qadi. Let me see. So I want you to understand that while I'm saying this, I'm not just picking on one person. I'm not just picking on a couple people. And I'm talking about philosophy, and the reason I keep picking on it is one of the first things I did when I was looking at this. I wanted to find out, because I had seen in my own research, I had seen courses on Islamic philosophy. And let me grow this screen. And this is one of the recommended textbooks on an Islamic philosophy site. And I sat there looking at this, and I read through it, and I was like, wait, this is just bizarre. I mean, okay. This is a Pakistani Muslim who wrote a book on philosophy. Okay. Again, they say you shouldn't study philosophy. But when you do, and you're a leader, that's okay. But if you're a peon, God forbid. What's good for the goose should be good for the gander. If you haven't heard that one, sorry, that's one of us, one of our Americanisms. Why not? Why isn't it good for everybody? I have real serious issues with that. Why is Islam afraid for people to know things? My real thoughts are this. Oh, here's the other one I wanted to show. Yeah, so let me pull this up here, and I'll share that one too. So I want you to understand, I'm not making, oops, did I push the wrong button? And I think I did. All right, so much for that idea. And pushing too many buttons. Just gotta find my mouse, forgive me. And we'll get right back. Okay. Some of these things you have to sit there and ask questions about. Now, I don't know how many people saw what's going on with what the big things that are going on today. I have been paying attention to what's going on in the Middle East, and I'm paying close attention to something that just came out from memory.org today. Really bothers me that the United States government doesn't talk about some of these things. And to say that they don't is incredibly bad. What am I talking about? And I just want to pull up this article, and I will tell you just a second. I have it starred in my email, and cannot believe I can get in a few hours. I can get a couple hundred emails. I hate that. All right, and now I have to go back and find it. Memory TV. It's not. That's what it is. Memory TV. Memory TV today put out an article. There's a video, and I'm not going to play it because I worry that I would give out bad information. But I do recommend it. I'm just going to put the link in the chat room, and I think I'll put it in private chat for those of you who are listening. And I'm going to see if I can get Gadi Edelman to come join us and talk about this next time or soon, because I think this article is something that must be discussed wherever you are. Please share this article out with your friends. If you have extra money flowing around, please throw it towards Memory TV. Please throw it towards memory.org. This work is incredibly important. So Memory wrote this article. It's their news release 10157. Telegram video share detailed instructions for carrying out terror attacks, killing Israelis in streets and coffee shops. I have a hard time reading this because one of my first and good papers in intelligence analysis field, when I was studying intelligence analysis, predicted a terror attack so much that it predicted it, and it actually happened as I was writing the article. And part of what I'm going to read is included in that article that I wrote many years ago. March 7th, 2023. Telegram channel The Wolf posted a series of videos providing Palestinians with detailed instructions for carrying out lone wolf attacks against Israelis and combating Israeli security forces following an attack. The first video describes how to combat Israeli security forces after carrying out an attack, with instructions to locate safe positions, hiding behind a car, using Israeli settlers as human shields. The second video, to avenge al-Aqsa, and includes a simulated ambush and armed Israeli settlers walking down the street, provides instructions on safe conduct throughout the attack. The third video, with a collage of Palestinian martyrs from recent clashes with Israeli military forces and footage of a mother of one of the martyrs saying that it is only natural to wage resistance against an invader. I suggest to anybody who would dare to consider the Jews of Israel an invader in the promised land, that was promised to them even according to the Quran, that they would be, if the Quran calls this land the land for, again, this land was given to the Jews. The Quran says that. How can they be the invaders? I suggest the opposite is true, that those who are followers of Islam are the invaders. Historically, we know that is true. I don't want to get more into this because it makes me actually feel violently ill. And I sit there marveling that, it took me so long to get into this. And I was talking to Sharon about this before I started the show today. We are willingly ignorant by not learning more about Islam. We have to invest our time learning their sources. Pick up your copy of the Generous Quran. Contact the Straight Way of Grace Ministry.org and talk to Usama Dakdak. If you have difficulty affording one, please call him. I mean, I think it is drastically important. Every single pastor out there, start to get informed on this, because what's happening in your community, it should be of no surprise. If you're uninformed, we're going to be in trouble. Usama says over and over again, the scriptures, he talks about the scripture that says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. What I shared with you today easily reveals that even the Muslims are destroyed for lack of knowledge about their leaders. If they knew what their leaders were actually doing versus what they're telling them, would they still be following Islam? One of the statements, I'm going to put it up here. Islam is a stupid cult. You have to ask yourself, is it intelligent to follow a group that tells you not to do something when its leaders do the opposite? It's okay for me, but not for thee. You have to ask these questions. Now, if you've been paying attention, I have provided example after example after example where Islamic leaders say, oh, you can't learn philosophy, but it's okay for me. What does it say? Christianity, we call it hypocrisy. I spend a lot of time in social media, maybe more than I should. And I have to say this, until Christians get informed, until Christian pastors start to get informed, we're in trouble. I'm going to recommend picking up my book, The Cancer of Civilization Jihad. Pick it up. I've sent it out to leaders of Interpol. I've sent it to leaders of Interpol in France. I've sent it to people who are doing leading counterterrorism groups in the UK. I'm going to send it wherever I can to get the message out. Those are all about Islamic social norms, behaviors that are justified by Islamic scriptures. It asks the question, are these things justified? If we are too stupid and too unwilling to find the answers, we suffer a horrible penalty. Now, this is the horrible penalty. When the USS Cole was attacked, I go back as far as the Beirut barracks being attacked, and I was unwilling, or willingly ignorant, is what I should say. It didn't bother me. I didn't have a need to know why. When they attacked the World Trade Center the first time, I didn't have a need to know why. The fact that they attacked it a second time, I foolishly didn't have a need to know why. You know when it became personal to me and I had to know why? It's when I realized the Muslim Brotherhood had moved into a college that I had gone to, that they had given $500,000 to Nazareth College of Rochester. It was in my backyard. What would have happened if I had actually paid attention and had been aware enough to say, don't take that money? What if I had actually been smart enough to say and aware enough to say, do you realize what you're doing? We can't be silent. I'm going to keep saying this over and over again. Christians, you have two obligations. Get in the Word. Get in the Word. Study daily. 2, never shut up. That means you must share Christ. And you must tell people who would compromise Christ. Just like Paul did in Galatians as we started this show. You must tell people when they are in error. Your pastor will love you for it. If you have to talk to him. I'm not saying all this needs to be done in public. Sometimes a nice private conversation makes the world a whole lot better. Stand up, people. Fight for Christ. Fight for Christ. God bless you all. Thank you for listening. I'm going to say good night. Oh, Aaron or Larry, did you have any last thoughts?
No, I wrote them down on the thing as you were talking. But thank you. Thank you.
The only thing I would say, Paul, is the more that you teach me, the more I understand the Muslims that I talk to. It just all fits now.
Again, the only reason I got into this today is because, quite frankly, I love philosophy. I don't necessarily, and when I say I love philosophy, I didn't necessarily love some of the things I had to learn. But the idea of taking things, ideas, concepts, and breaking them down. So I'm going to leave everybody with this one. One of the things I love my professor, Dr. David Basinger, for is he taught me one all-important thing. And I think it was my junior year or my senior year that he taught this. Might have been younger. I don't remember. But he talked about the concept of a control belief that determines what everything around. So what is a control belief? It's the underlying thing. It's the one pillar. You can't take it out. If you take it out, everything falls. So for Christianity, this is where I stopped. And I'm just trying to think, as simple as it is, what is the one thing in Christianity? I'll start with Judaism. I can tell you what the verse is for Judaism. It's called the Shema. Deuteronomy 6:4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. The word for one is chad. I'm probably pronouncing it somewhat incorrectly. It means united one. For the Christian, it can be taken simply, I'm going to put it in 2 steps. 1, Jesus is the Messiah. He fulfills all of Judaism. By doing that, he gave his life so that you and I can be saved from our sins. Us unworthy pieces of crap. Unworthy because There's nothing we can do to save ourselves. Jesus came to save us. We have the only God that runs to man with love and something free. We have that. That's the control belief for Christianity. Now, what is the control belief for Islam? And I'm going to upset a lot of Muslims with this. That Allah can't exist without Muhammad. God bless you all. Thank you.